Vasco-da-Gama captained 4 vessels when he set out on July 8, 1497. Da Gama himself rode in the 200-ton Saint Gabriel, and his younger brother Paolo led Saint Rafale. Da Gama sailed south, taking advantage of the prevailing winds off the western coast of Africa, and swung out into the Atlantic before veering back in an arc to meet the South African coast. He then rounded the Cape of Good Hope and ventured into the Indian Ocean. By the time they reached Indian Ocean waters, most of his crew was infected with scurvy. Da Gama made landfall in Mozambique to rest and resupply. There, they had skirmishes with the Sultan, who did not believe the Europeans' gifts were sufficient. They then landed in Mombasa and Malindi, where an Arab guide agreed to assist Da Gama. The guide may have been famous Arab navigator Ahmad ibn Magid. Da Gama's fleet sailed for 23 days before landing at Calicut, India, modern-day Kozhikode, on May 20, 1498. The Europeans assumed the locals were Christians, though they were actually Hindus. Despite this misunderstanding, the ruler of Calicut agreed to trade with the Da Gama, and he acquired a large supply of valuable spices. The Muslims, who were already traded at Calicut, however, were less inviting of Da Gama's competition and forced Da Gama to barter many of his spices in order to acquire sufficient supplies for the trip home. Hello everyone, how are you all? I hope you're doing really good. You know who was the first Portuguese to land in India? Yes, you're correct, Vasco-da-Gama. And if you want to know the truths and facts about Vasco-da-Gama, head up to episode number 1. Yeah, that's in Hindi, but if you want me to record that in English, do write me on my mail or ping me on my Instagram handle. So yeah, let's continue this episode with Portugal colonialism in Goa, or we can say in India. Portuguese arrival. Vasco da Gama commanded the first circumnavigation of Africa, relying on stories and maps from earlier Portuguese voyages. His fleet of 4 ships set off from Lisbon in 1497. After island stops at Tenerife and Cape Verde, the ships made landfall on the West African coast. They then steered southwest into the vast South Atlantic Ocean, near Brazil. By making an eastward turn, they headed toward the southern Cape of Africa, which they rounded. After passing by the Rio do Infante, described earlier by a fellow explorer, a northward course was set. The ships stopped at the East African ports of Mozambique, Mombasa, and Malinda. An Arab pilot or an Indian then guided their remaining course across the Arabian Sea. A year out from Lisbon, Da Gama's fleet landed in Calicut, India. Their arrival signaled the end of Muslim monopoly over the region's maritime trade. Before the Portuguese ships came to India, the seas to the east has been dominated by the Thalassocratic Chola Empire of the Tamils, followed by their Shailendra dynasty and other Indianized seafaring states of Java and Sumatra. Indian shipbuilding had a high reputation at the time. Yet, by the 15th century, the navigation of Indian waters was in the hands of Arabs, both toward the east and westward toward the Gulf and the Red Sea. Afonso de Albuquerque. When the Francisco de Almeida arrived to serve as the first Portuguese viceroy of the East, 1505 to 1509, already there was a regional war on the Malabar coast. In 1505, Estado da India was established there, in Cochin, considerably south of Goa. After the Portuguese naval victory at Diu in 1509, Francisco de Almeida was replaced as Portugal's overall commander in the Indian Ocean by Al-buh-kuh-kee. He had at his disposal a fleet of 23 ships and more than 1,000 men. In January 1510, he was approached by a Hindu bandit chief, Timoji, with the suggestion that he should attack Goa while the city's Muslim ruler, Ismail Adil Shah, was distracted by a rebellion inland. Timoji hoped to emerge as Goa's ruler with Portuguese support. In March, Albuquerque duly occupied the city, but his hold on the conquest was tenuous. Tenuous means having very little strength or being shaky, and he soon withdrew to avoid facing a counterattack that might have been supported by the restive population. Fortunately, reinforcements arrived in the form of a Portuguese fleet bound for Malacca. Albuquerque hijacked this fleet and diverted it to a second attack on Goa. The seaborne assault was made with overwhelming force. Within a day, the Goan defenses were overcome. Despite brave resistance by a Muslim garrison, about two-thirds of Muslim defenders are said to have been killed, either struck down in the fighting or drowned trying to escape the Portuguese fury. Timoji was assigned only a subordinate role as Albuquerque set about turning Goa into the capital of Portugal's naval and commercial empire in Asia. Goa was destined to remain under colonial rule until 1961. It was the last as well as the first European possession in India. Losses: Muslim people around 6,000 to 9,000, and loss of Portuguese people is still unknown. The dark history of Goa also describes the forced conversion of Hindus in Goa into Christianity. Yeah, the Portuguese people, the Portuguese Empire, forced every single Hindu and Muslim or any other religion people to convert into Christianity and turn that whole city, that whole territory into a Christian population. Even the things which are considered sacred in other religions, like Tulsi in Hinduism, was banned. If any Hindu or Muslim were caught performing their rituals and offerings, either they were forced to convert into Christianity, else they were killed, or they were just prohibited from that particular region, like the Goa region, the Portuguese Empire. Many temples and other religious places were demolished and churches were made by the colonials, or we can say Portuguese. They turned out to be really, really cruel. Even the jobs were provided to the Christians only. There were many, many rare cases where people of other religions were working under Portuguese. They were totally prohibited. They were not allowed to work under them if they belong from any other community or religion. There's also an interesting story about black pepper, if you don't know. If you have heard the episodes Indian foods of this series, you must know about this. So the fact is, Europeans, when they first arrived in India, they were trading in spices. Like, India is well known for spices, right? So they were trading with spices. And one of the most expensive spice in Europe was black pepper. So this has a great story. Like, they used to describe the story as, when we go to India, there are many mines of black pepper. The farmers of black pepper just go down the earth and take that out from mines. They collect it. It's a job of huge risk. And they collect it, they take it away from there, they bring it to us, and we pay a huge amount to this. And this was totally lie. This was not at all the truth, and the black pepper was given as a amount of salary to the European laborers or workers. So this was a great scam they used to do with their very own people. Yeah. And if you want more description about how Vasco da Gama was and what was his purposes, head up to episode number first, please. You'll get to know about the truths and facts. So yeah. The Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque became second viceroy, 1509 to 1515. In 1510, Timoji requested the Portuguese to take over Goa. The offer was welcomed. The city then quickly seized from Ismail Adil Shah, ruler of Bijapur Sultanate, but as quickly lost. Albuquerque, however, returned in force on 25 November. In a day, the gunnery of a Portuguese ships and armed parties landing on shore regained possession. Ismail Adil Shah and his Egyptian Mamluk allies formally surrendered Goa on 10th December. An estimate held that 6,000 to 9,000 Muslim defenders died in the battle on the streets or trying to flee. So this was a brief about this, yeah. Now, Albuquerque gained direct support from the Hindu people, which frustrated Timoji. He had expected to take autocratic command of the city. Albuquerque secured his victory. Most of the population of Goa were Konkani-speaking Hindus, and Albuquerque had a good sense to cut their taxes in half. In spite of frequent attacks by raiders, Goa became the center of Portuguese India. Albuquerque started a Portuguese mint in Goa. Mint means industrial facility which manufactures coins that can be used as currencies. Local merchants in Timoji had complained about the scarcity of currency. The new coin served to announce the recent conquests. Its value was pegged to existing coins. An additional mint was built in Portuguese Malacca. Albuquerque and his successors left the customs and constitutions of 30 village communities on the island almost untouched, abolishing only the right of sati, in which widows were burned on their husband's funeral pyre. A register of these customs, Foral de Osose Customs, was published in 1526. It is among the most valuable historical documents pertaining to Goan customs. Goa was the base for Albuquerque's conquest of Malacca. Malacca is a state of Malaysia located in the southern region of the Malay Peninsula, facing the Strait of Malacca. Its capital is Malacca City, dubbed the Historic City, which has been listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 7 July 2008. In 1511 and Hormuz in 1515, Albuquerque intended to be a colony and a naval base, distinct from the fortified factories established in certain Indian seaports. Goa was made capital of the Portuguese Vice Kingdom in Asia and the other Portuguese possessions in India, Malacca and other bases in Indonesia, East Timor, and Persian Gulf, Macau in China. Portuguese India consisted of several isolated tracts. The territory of Goa, with the capital, a considerable area in the middle of the west coast of India, Damau or Daman, with the separated territories of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, north of Mumbai, formerly Bombay, and lying between the Indian states of Maharashtra and Gujarat. Third, Diu, with Panikota Island on the southern coast of Kathiawar Peninsula in Gujarat state. The total area under Portuguese control was 1619 square miles. That's around 4,193 square kilometers. Goa accounted for the bulk of Portuguese India in terms of both territory and population. For judicial purposes, the province of Goa also included Macau in China and Timor in the Malay archipelago. Portuguese India formed a single administrative province under a governor-general and a single ecclesiastical province subject to the Archbishop of Goa. This ecclesiastical means church, especially as an established institution. And this was also the office of the East. The voyages of Portuguese navigator Vasco-da-Gama, 1497 to 99, 1502 to 03, and 1524, opened the sea route from Western Europe to Asia by the way of Cape of Good Hope. For almost a century, 1500 to 1600, the Portuguese hold a monopoly on European exploration and trade in the Indian Ocean. Portuguese interests on the west coast of India was largely determined by sailing conditions, and in Goa, they found a defensible island site with excellent harbor facilities on either side. Goa was Portugal's first territorial possession in India, in fact, in Asia, captured by Afonso de Albuquerque in 1510. And it served as the main Portuguese base in the east for 4.5 centuries. Albuquerque had intended Goa to be a colony and a naval base, as distinct from the fortified factories which had been established in certain Indian seaports. He encouraged his men to marry indigenous women, which means the native women of the particular region, and to settle in Goa as farmers, retail traders, or artisans. These men and their descendants soon became a privileged caste, and Goa acquired a large Eurasian population. And marrying indigenous women was also a fact of generation change, so that the next generation becomes the generation of the father, obviously. So, the religion of the coming generation will be changed into whatever religion the father is following. So, this is also a fact. So let's move into Christianity in Goa. The Crown in Lisbon undertook to finance missionary activity. Missionaries and priests converted large number of people in all spheres of society, especially in Goa. Saint Francis Xavier in Goa pioneered the establishment of a seminary called St. Paul's College. It was the first Jesuit headquarters in Asia. Saint Francis founded the college to train Jesuit missionaries. He went to the Far East, traveling towards China. Missionaries of the Jesuit order spread out through India, going as far as north as the court of the great Mughal emperor Jalaluddin Akbar. Having heard about the Jesuits, he invited them to come and teach him and his children about Christianity. From Goa, the Jesuit order was able to set up base almost anywhere in Asia for evangelistic missions, including the founding of Roman Catholic colleges, universities, and faculties of education. Jesuits are known for their work in education, intellectual research, and cultural pursuits, and for their missionary efforts. Jesuits also give retreats and ministers in hospitals and parishes. St. Paul's College, Goa was a base for their evangelization of Macau, and then for their important missionary campaigns into China and Japan. Macau eventually superseded St. Paul's College, Goa. They built St. Paul College in 1594, now the University of Macau, known in Latin as the College of Mater Dei. Due to this personal enmity with the Jesuits, the Marquis de Pombal expelled the order from Portuguese territories in 1762. The Macau University combined evangelization with education. In the year 1600, Antonio de Andrade made a long voyage from Lisbon to Goa. When he pursued his higher studies at St. Paul's College and was ordained a Jesuit priest, he eventually became rector of the same college. He made a landmark missionary expedition from Goa across the length of India and into Tibet. He overcame incredible hardships in the journey of first European to cross the Himalaya mountains into Tibet. There he founded churches and a mission in 1625. The body of the co-founder of the Society of Jesus, Francis Xavier, whose example many Goan missionaries tried to emulate by engaging in evangelizing work in Asia, was shipped to Goa on 11 December 1553. Goa has also produced its own saints, the martyrs of Kunkulim. Kunkulim revolt was an incident that involved the massacre and mutilation of Christian priests and civilians by Hindu chieftains in the Portuguese Goa village of Kunkulim on Monday, 15 July 1583. Saint Joseph was, whose missionary exploits in Sri Lanka are remembered with gratitude in that country, and the Venerable Angelo de Souza, a Roman Catholic priest of Society of the Missionaries of St. Francis Xavier. The 16th century monument, the cathedral or Sé, was constructed during Portugal's Golden Age and is the largest church in Asia, as well as larger than any church in Portugal. The church is 250 feet in length and 181 feet in breadth. The frontispiece stands 115 feet high. The cathedral is dedicated to Saint Catherine of Alexandria and is also known as Saint Catherine's Cathedral. It was on her feast day in 1510 that Afonso de Albuquerque defeated the Muslim army and took possession of the city of Goa. The Goa Inquisition. This was an extension of the Portuguese Inquisition in Portuguese India. Its objective was to enforce Catholic orthodoxy and allegiance to the Apostolic See of Rome. Conversions took place through the Goan Inquisition with the persecution of Hindus. This was the office of the Inquisition acting within the Indian state of Goa and the rest of the Portuguese Empire in Asia. It was established in 1560, briefly suppressed from 1774 to 1778, and finally abolished in 1812 based on the records that survive. H.P. Solomon and I.S.D. Sassoon state that between the Inquisition's beginning in 1561 and its temporary abolition in 1774, some 16,202 persons were brought to trial. Of this number, 57 were sentenced to death and executed. Another 64 were burned in effigy, most of were subjected to punishments or penances. The Inquisition was established to punish new Christians who continued practicing their ancestral religion in secret. Many Sephardic Jews, as falsely converted Catholics, had immigrated to Goa from the Iberian Peninsula. Due to persecution by the Inquisition, most left and migrated to Fort St. George, later Madras and Chennai, Cochin, where the English and the Dutch allowed them to be openly Jewish. In Goa, the Inquisition also looked carefully Indian converts from Hinduism or Islam who were thought to have returned to their original ways. It prosecuted non-converts who broke prohibitions against the observance of Hindu or Muslim rites, or interfered with Portuguese attempts to convert non-Christians to Catholicism. Goan Inquisition was abolished in 1812. So let's put a pause in this episode. I'll cover more details on the next episode. I thought I'll be covering all the things here, but this episode's length is going on and on. It went 24 minutes here. So yeah, everything upcoming will be covered in the next episode of the Goa 16.3, the history of Goa. So yeah, I'll cover Portugal relations with neighboring powers and Estado da India, 18th and 19th century, and Second World War, independence movement, and many things. There's many things to come up as Goa has a great history. So yeah, till then, take good care of your health. I'll see you real soon in the next episode. Till then, keep listening to India Unveiled. And if you're new to this series, this podcast, don't forget to listen other episodes too. I have great details of India which were never covered anywhere else. So yeah, this is Rakesh signing off from India Unveiled. See you soon. Thank you for listening.